we have a very loud salawat for the Eid of Mab'ath to celebrate the Eid Mab'ath. Can we say a very loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad? Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. It's Friday, it's the end of the week. Everyone should have a lot of energy. Weekend. Give us a very loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Muhammad. That's much better. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Welcome to Imam Hussein Center. Inshallah, we are at the end of COVID and we can start to come to the center more often and celebrate these special occasions with the month of Sha'ban at our doorstep, Shahr Ramadan in April. Inshallah, we can fill this center and hear the beautiful dua of the brother and many more du'as of the lovely brothers and sisters that are part of the Imam Hussein Islamic Center community, inshallah. Today, we have a very special occasion, as you know, Eid al Mab'ath, which was when the Prophet ﷺ was commanded to spread his message. Prophet Muhammad was always a prophet, but the Eid Mab'ath is the day when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded the Prophet, now it's time to spread Islam. And alhamdulillah, from that day till today, we are guided with truth and light. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And I've got the beautiful brother who is going to start us off with a beautiful recitation of the Quran. Can you please welcome brother Ali Mar'i, inshallah, with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allah.
صلى على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق. خلق الإنسان من علق. اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم. علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم. كلا إن الإنسان ليطغى أن رآه استغنى. إن إلى ربك الرجعى. أرأيت الذي ينهى عبدا إذا صلى. أرأيت إن كان على الهدى أو أمر بالتقوى. أرأيت إن كذب وتولى. ألم يعلم بأن الله يرى. ألم يعلم بأن الله الليل نسفعا بالناصية ناصية كاذبة خاطئة فليدع ناديه سندع الزبانية كلا لا تطعه واسجد واقترب صدق الله العلي العظيم. This is our mandatory sajda for the last verse of Surah Al-Alaq. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
A very loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad for the brother's health and for his continuation of reciting in such a beautiful and eloquent manner. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Wa salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Before I introduce Sheikh to get up and give us a beautiful, a lovely speech today, can I just ask all the children who are under 12, there are classes upstairs. If you can go upstairs, there's a lot of entertainment upstairs if you're under 12. So the classes are upstairs, but you can go outside and Sister Farouzan will show you where the classes are. Also, just a couple of announcements before we get started, inshallah. We here are a small community, and sometimes we don't get things right, but it's through the suggestions of people like yourselves that we need you to keep on telling us what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong. We need your suggestions. We need your advice. And don't feel that you can't do this. At the center, we can't thrive without you. You're the members of Imam Hussein Center, and we are all here to work together for one purpose, and that is to spread the message of the Prophet ﷺ, to spread the message of Islam, and to bring up a healthy community, to allow our kids to thrive, to allow our youth to thrive. These days, if you're not part of a community, it is very difficult, especially surviving in an area on your own. There's a lot of bad influence out there. And if your kids or if you choose the wrong people to role model, it is a very slippery slope. Sheikh Mansour, Sheikh Mohammed used to always say, when parents come to them and their kids are in their teens and they say, my kid is doing this, it's really, it's late. If your kids are not part of a community and then you want, it's like planting a tree. If you don't plant the tree and give it nutrients and look after it from an early stage, when the tree is huge and it's sloped to one side, it's very difficult to, get it to be upright again. So, and alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, we have a beautiful center. We have a beautiful board. The board always says we need to listen to our beautiful members to know what we need to do. And inshallah this year, Ya Rab, with your du'as, we will see the back end of COVID, alhamdulillah. Now we have Russia, so COVID's all over, alhamdulillah. COVID's gone, we have other issues in the world, but inshallah, we can start to see more of you. We can start to have more things to do with the youth. That's our plan this year. We want to be much more active. And we cannot be active if you do not suggest to us what we need to do and what works and what makes you happy. Okay? So on that note, give us a very loud salawat for a new beginning, inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Don't forget next week on Friday, it's the birth of Imam Hussein, Imam Sajjad, Abu Fadl Abbas alayhi salam. Next Friday on the 11th of March. The A'mal, and we'll also have the A'mal of the night of the 15th of Sha'ban on Friday, the 18th of March. On the Imam Hussein website and on Facebook, we'll have all the announcements and all the days of the A'mal. Please try and make it. It would be nice to start the year with A'mal and a lot of collaboration together, inshallah. And now I'll welcome Habib al-Adab with a very, very loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, Sheikh Mohammed Mehdi.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بفضل الله بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الحمد لله والحمد حقه كما يستحقه حمدا كثيرا الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله اللهم العن أول ظالم ظلم حق محمد وآل محمد وآخر تابع له على ذلك اللهم العنهم جميعا ثم الصلاة والسلام على خير خلق الله أجمعين محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. Firstly, I'd like to congratulate you all, especially our master Al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan al-Mahdi, Arwahuna Fidah, on this magnificent occasion, the celebration wa alaykum as-salam of the deliverance or the Mab'ath and Nabawi Sharif of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There are so many ways we can approach this discussion. But before we begin, I need to remove any doubts that people may have with regard to this day. This is not the day where the Prophet discovered that he was a prophet. This is the day where Allah Azza wa Jal commanded the Prophet to deliver the message. Because as we know in the Hadith Sharif an al-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam says, I was a prophet while Adam was between the water and the clay. And before Adam was even created, I was a prophet. And this is also verified in the Quran. When you read in the Quran where Allah Azza wa Jal says, we gave our covenant to the prophets and we gave our covenant to you and to Nuh and to Ibrahim and to Musa and to Isa. If you look at the sequence, the first of them is you, to Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. But what is this story about the Mab'ath? Because if you understand this story, you will find where the clash comes in between especially those that have wished harm towards Islam. People like Salman Rushdie, who wrote the book Satanic Verses. It's a very long time ago, if you actually think about it right now. 33 years ago when he wrote this book, where was the origins of his writings? All these people that obviously they hate Islam essentially, but what gave them the ammunition? Where was their supply? It comes down especially to this story. Because this story is oft repeated. It's mentioned in Sahih Bukhari, in Sahih Muslim, in many of the narration books, the same story is either mentioned in part. And what I will do tonight, inshallah, I will talk firstly, and if time allows us, we'll continue on some other point regarding the Ba'athah. But I will first discuss the Sunni narration or the common Muslims narration, and then I will look at the distinguished Muslims narration or the followers of Ahl al-Bayt. Now the common Muslims narration, which is present in Sahih al-Bukhari, begins first, it says, عن عائشة أنها قالت. So the narration begins by being narrated from Aisha, and it does not give a chain. So in other words, it's narrated from her. It doesn't say how she received this narration, but it says because usually we have the an narrated from this person, from that person, that he heard Rasulullah say. That's what the narrations usually say. It doesn't say this. It says أنها قالت, which means when we see this, it means that they were an eyewitness. However, there's a problem here, because Aisha herself claims that she married the Prophet at a very young age. This is her claim, not anyone else's. That's what she claims, which is another piece of ammunition they use against the Muslims. The age that she gives of her marriage suggests that she was born 6 years after the Ba'ath. So she wasn't even around. So this is the first problem we have. The fact that she narrates a narration of something that she was not eyewitness to, nor she was privy to, nor did it take place during her life. So where she brings this hadith from is not mentioned by Muhammad Ismail Bukhari. So she begins the story by saying that the Prophet had seen visions in his dream. He would get a vision and he would wake up. A few nights later, he would get another vision, and then he would get up. And seeing all these visions, he had a feeling that he wanted to be alone. She says that he wanted to be alone. So thus he decided to go to Ghar Hira, or Cave Hira as we call it, for those that have been there, when those that have been to the Hajj and actually decided to climb to the top, and get to the top. It's changed. So when you initially went, you would go inside, there was place to pray. Now it's just like a New York subway. It's all graffitied. You know, people have written all over it. And they've actually, the Saudis have bought baboons there, and they've put them all over the place. Not baboons, they bought some kind of monkey. I don't know, because when the monkeys got up there, I really didn't want to go up there anymore. So they had all these, not that I ever went there, so I'm just pretending that I did. But all these monkeys were all around, and they changed the whole environment as a method to deter the people from going up there. And even, like I said, you see someone's put wet cement there, people have written things in the wet cement, you know, so-and-so was here and stuff like that. It's like, you know, at a park bench back in the 1980s. It's just completely changed this place. So anyway, she says that he went there and he remained there and he would worship. That is what she says in the narration. And then she said he would return back to his wife Khadija, Radwanullahi ta'ala alayha, and he would get provisions. He would get provisions and he would return to the cave. It's very important that you listen to this version of the story, because it's good when you hear two versions of the story. So I remember once I was having a discussion with a Sunni Muslim, and I told him that the Prophet died while his head was in the lap of Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. He said, no, he died while his head was in the lap of Aisha. I said, okay, I will read both narrations to you, and then you decide how he died. I said, the one that says that he died with his head in the lap of Ali ibn Abi Talib says that his last words from the dunya were as-salat, 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 and he died. The hadith that says that his head was in the lap of Aisha says his last words were in the dunya, he asked her to bring his chamber pot so he can relieve himself. وَمَاتَ عَلَى هَذِهِ الْحَالَةِ. She says, and he died in this state. He died either waiting to relieve himself, or he died while relieving himself. Now you tell me which hadith is the one you will accept. So when you look at this hadith, you look at one of them is intent on what? Destroying and defaming the image of the Prophet. And the other one is the one that gives you the news of the Prophet. What really happened with Rasulullah. So this is why it's important for us to analyze both narrations. So he would go back, get provisions, she says, from Khadija, and then return to his place of worship. Then one day, while he's in Ghar Hira, he's in cave Hira, Jibreel appears. And this is what he says to him, according to the narration. He says, Iqra. And he says, when he says Iqra, which means it's a verb in the imperative form, Iqra, read. He says, Ma ana biqari. Now, Ma ana biqari could be, what do you want me? Ma ana biqari, what do you want me to read? Even the translators here would say, he said, Ma ana biqari. The way you present a sentence changes the meaning of it, Ma ana biqari, what do you want me to do? They said, Ma ana biqari. There's a nafi there. There's a nafi, ma ana biqari, that I don't read. So they said, thus he is illiterate. We say the Prophet was not taught formally in the dunya. The Quran says, this is another discussion, I don't want to go into this. Allamahu shadidul quwa. Allah Azza wa Jal taught the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. However, they say he says, Ma ana biqari, that I do not read. I cannot read. Then it says, Qala. This is what she says. Then Jibreel said, فَأَخَذَنِي. She said that the Prophet says that Jibreel said, فَأَخَذَنِي فَغَطَّنِي حَتَّى بَلَغَ مِنِّي الْجَهْدِ ثُمَّ أَرْسَلَنِي. فَأَخَذَنِي. She says, فَغَطَّنِي. غَطَّنِي, according to the language, means either he hugged me very harshly, he squeezed me. Other interpretations say no, he actually throttled the Prophet. He was strangling him by the throat. It says, حَتَّى بَلَغَ مِنِّي الْجَهْدِ, which means until I was about to suffocate and die. He was about to pass out, black out. And then he says, ثُمَّ أَرْسَلَنِي, then he released me. Could you imagine watching this sequence of events? Read, and then someone throttling the other guy. And you go, this is God's best creation? Getting strangled by an angel? What's going to happen to us? So anyway, then there was a repeat. He said, Iqra, read. He said, وَمَا أَنَا بِقَارِئ. Once again, strangled or bear hugged, whatever he did, until he said he let go. Then a third time it happened. Then he said, after the third time, I was thinking when I was reading this hadith, I said, is this a revelation or a WWE episode? What's happening here? It says, read till, he reaches the end of it. What's going on here? What's happening? And this is God's greatest creation. So then he said, اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق, as our brother Ali Mir'i so beautifully, using your adjective, recited, okay, خلق الإنسان من علق. So he told him to read this verse, اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق. This is the one that we read. And this is what the recitation, this needs a discussion on its own with regard to knowledge. Because the first revelation was Iqra, which is to read. What the second revelation, a lot of people say, was Noon wal qalami wa ma yasturun. One was to read, the other was to write. So in this manner. So then the Prophet returned from this episode. This is what she says. He returned, she said, while his heart was shaken. And it says, while his heart was shaken, he came to Khadija, Radwanullahi ta'ala alayha. And then he says to her, Zammiluni. Zammiluni. فزمل, he says فزملوه حتى ذهب عنه الروى. Now hold on, here's a point we have when he mentions this. He's come in, he's very afraid. Okay? His heart shook, and then he said زملون. هلا زملوني, he's speaking obviously in what? He's speaking in plural. So it feels like there's more than Khadija in the room. Zammiluni might mean, and a lot of people lean to the fact that it means to get a kisa or a cloak. Zammiluni could also, the way, when I first read it without thinking, I said, Zammiluni, the meaning from Zumala, give me company. Because his heart, you know, when you come and you're very scared, when people, you know, when a child's scared runs to his parents' bedroom at night and he sees the crowd, he feels comfort. That's what I thought it actually meant. You know, but then there's also that interpretation that it means a cloak. حتى ذهب عنه الروع, until the fear had subsided. When the fear, and he was so petrified, had subsided. You think about this. This is what it's saying. Then he says, لقد خشيت على نفسي. And this is an argument. You'll see in Arabic debates, when you see Christians or Muslims, they use this argument. They say, لَقَدْ خَشِيتُ عَلَى نَفْسِي. Because the interpreters say, I was afraid for myself. They say, what? The fact that his heart, these are Sunni interpreters, ulama, they say, خَشِيتُ عَلَى نَفْسِي. They say, يعني أخاف على نفسه من الجنون. That he was afraid that he was going mad. He was afraid that he was going mad. Then you think, what's the Quran say? وَمَا صَاحِبُكُمْ بِمَجْنُونَ. That they're accusing him of something that the Quran exonerates him from. So this narration is bringing us to the point to say that he was almost going mad. We still haven't got to the juice of this hadith yet. You think you've heard it all, the strangling, it gets better and better as you go along. Then Khadija said, hold on. No, it's not you that would be like this. You give to your family, you're good to your family, you give to the poor, you do all these good actions. It's unlike you to be going in this direction. Then she says, hold on, let's go see my cousin. And when it mentions her cousin, his name is mentioned as Waraqata ibn Nawfal. And then when it describes him in this hadith, the first thing it mentions, amazing, all the best friends of him are this. He was fluent in Hebrew. Just like it reminds you of Ka'b al-Ahbar, who was Umar ibn al-Khattab's best friend. Ka'b al-Ahbar was fluent in Hebrew. So Waraqat ibn Nawfal was fluent in Hebrew. And he used to write the Injil, or what remained of the Injil, in Hebrew. Mind you, when you read this, pretty much there was nothing left of the Injil. You know, by then, if you look at historically, by then Constantine had absolutely destroyed all the remnants of the Injil. By what? By the 4th century AD. It was all destroyed. It didn't, or BCE if you want to be PC. But in the 4th century, he had destroyed all the remnants of the Injil, and he had compiled the book. He had brought the book together himself, the Emperor Constantine. So anyway, so he was writing of the Injil, it says in Hebrew. That's what the hadith is saying. And it says he was an elderly man and that he was blind. It speaks very detailed about him. When the Prophet informed Waraqat of what had happened to him, and Waraqat immediately said, yes, this is what was like unto Moses. Notice, they say Waraqat was a Christian, but the person he speaks Hebrew, the person he refers to is who? This is what brings a question mark. First person mentions Moses. He doesn't say Jesus. He says this is what was revealed unto Moses. He says, not only only does he believe in what he has heard, believes the story of the Prophet didn't even believe himself, and Waraqah was already believing in what he said. However, at no point does it say Waraqah became a Muslim. He's not a Sahabi, he's not considered a Sahabi. So it says that not only did he inform him that this is actually revelation, you are now a prophet, he said, you will be rejected by your people. He tells him of things to come. Now, honestly, if I told you right now, if I gave you, a premonition, I told you like next month, the whole what's it called, the whole Zionist entity will collapse, and it happens next month, inshallah. You'll come up and say, oh my God, how did you know? No matter what I say to you, that you'll say, you knew this, you have some hidden knowledge. That's what you're going to say. This Waraqah is telling the Prophet of things to come in many years from now. And he says this to him. Not only does he believe what he says, he also tells him what's to come, yet the Prophet's the Prophet and not Waraqah. You'd think Waraqah's the Prophet because he's the one that's informing him this is the job of the Prophet, to give us confidence in the hereafter. وَمَا هُوَ عَلَى الْغَيْبِ بِضَنِينَ. If the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi if he's a prophet, he's got to be telling us of things to come. He's got to know of the hereafter, inform us, yet we have this elderly Christian man who's informing us and not the Prophet. So the Prophet then believed that from Waraqah that Jibreel was what? Was a messenger of God. So that's what he believed. Now, here's the problem. It says after this, it's in the narration, this narration just gets better and better. It says the revelation was cut from the Prophet. Now let's just apply this to us. Imagine things are all good and suddenly things go bad. People start worrying, they get concerned. Why aren't things working out for me anymore? They turn around and say, what's happening? Aisha claims in this narration that when the Prophet, this is in Sahih Bukhari, when the Prophet, he mentions, had missed out on revelation for a while, he became intensely grieved. He was very saddened. And it says that he became so saddened. Listen to this. This is tragic to say the least. That he would get up on the mountain and contemplate suicide. Then he would attempt to commit suicide. He'd get to the edge of the cliff. Just as he was about to commit suicide because the revelation had not come to him, Jibreel would come out and say, hold on, Muhammad, anta Rasulullah haqqan, you are the Prophet. So he'd back off. Then he'd wait for the revelation that didn't come. He'd get up and try and commit. It happens miraran. If you read the hadith, it keeps happening. So then I said to myself, it's like a kid that says to his parents, if you don't do this for me, I'm going to injure myself or I'm going to harm myself. It's made out to be like this. Attempting to kill himself. This is meant to be the messenger of God. You have to throttle him to read. He thinks he's gone mad. He needs a Jewish monk to tell him. A Christian monk to tell him that he's a prophet. And then he still has doubts and wants to kill himself because he hasn't been told. Then when a rider comes and attacks Islam, what do you have to say to this rider? The ammunition's been given to him. He reads narrations like this, says this is easy. You Muslims have handed me the rope. I can take advantage of this. And then, how am I supposed to see someone accept faith when they read something like this? How can they accept Islam? Someone with reason that's looking for truth. Obviously, an extremist that's heading towards Nar Jahannam will read this and accept it because he's an extremist. He doesn't care. But someone that has reason, someone that's rational, would never accept something like this. In fact, in our community, if we know someone's contemplating suicide, we seek medical help for them. We don't wait till he gets up to the cliff 3-4 times. Imagine someone gets to the top building and wants to jump off. The police will talk him out of it, but they won't say, all right, you can go back as a normal member of society. They'll take you to go seek medical help. Hasha li Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam to be mentioned in such a manner. Let's take a look at the version from Ahl al-Bayt salawatullahi wa salamu alayhim, sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. This narration is narrated by the 11th Holy Imam Al-Hasan ibn Ali al-Askari alayhi salam from his father Ali ibn Muhammad al-Hadi salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, and so on and so forth, as the narrations come from father, son, all the way to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. He says that when Rasulullah had returned from trade in Damascus, because you know when we have لِإِلَافِ قُرَيْشِ, you know when you read the verse, إِلَافِهِمْ رَحْلَةَ الشِّتَاءِ وَالصَّيْفِ, these were trade routes that they would go on their trade would go between Damascus and Mecca. That's how the trade routes were. That's when you read about the Battle of Badr, you'll see the origins of this. So they'd go to Damascus, and when he had returned from Damascus, this is what he says. He said, when Rasulullah had come back from Damascus, and he had given the money he had made, he had spent it as given it as sadaqah fi sabilillah, had given it in the way of Allah Azza wa Jal. See how it starts off? It begins in this manner. It doesn't begin, look at the way it begins. Firstly, Rasulullah was working. Secondly, he's giving charity. So the hadith begins. And then he says he would go daily to Ghar Hira. He would go to cave Hira daily. And what he would do, if you read the hadith, it's different. If you actually read how Aisha puts it, she says that he was in worship while he was there. Here it begins and explains that the Prophet would look out the heavens, and he'd look at the earth, and he'd look at the creation. الَّذِينَ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. He would reflect. In fact, if you reflect for a moment, it's better than worship for a year. He would reflect and look at the creation to remind himself of Allah Azza wa Jal. You know, one of the best things about anyone that studies a science, while they do this study, who do they remember? Allah Azza wa Jal. When they see something amazing take place, they remember God. They see what takes place, and things that are beyond understanding, and they remember Allah Azza wa Jal. Imagine you're working in any of the sciences. If you're a marine biologist, for example, you're looking at the animals in the sea, the way the sea functions, the way the tides, all this makes you what? Remember Allah Azza wa Jal. So Rasulullah, he says, is reflecting over the creation and remembers Allah Azza wa Jal in this manner, and he worships. And he's doing this all the time for these 40 years, all these during the time from when he's able to worship till then. So it wasn't from the moment he saw a dream, he said, all right, I'm going to go to the cave. It's not like that moment is when he says it's time, he's matured. You know, it's not that he reaches the point of maturity, he says, now I'm going to go and see what my calling is. Then he says that نظر الله عز وجل إلى قلبه فوجده أفضل القلوب. That begins, Allah Azza wa Jal looked upon the heart of Rasulullah, and he found it to be the best of hearts. Just to give you an idea of who you're dealing with from the very beginning. Then he says, وَأَجَلَّهَا وَأَطْوَعَهَا وَأَخْشَعَهَا وَأَخْضَعَهَا. So every quality in obedience, in reverence, it was the most contrite heart. In other words, the Imam is giving you a description about who is about to carry this message. Not someone that needs to go ask someone else. My dear brothers and sisters, Did you know that there are people, when they read the Quran, they use qiyas to explain what the Quran is? They say, I think this is a man. What do you mean you think? Who are you to think? When one man came up to the 8th holy Imam, Al-Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Rida, salawatullahi wa salamu alayh, and he said to him that the Quran yufassiru ba'dahu ba'da, the Quran explains itself. And the Imam says to him, there are verses that are muhkamat, that these verses are vivid, they're easy to understand. وَأَخَرَ مُتَشَابِهًا, and the others are allegorical, they're not clear for anyone to understand. And there are people that know them. And these people, only these people understand them. And he says, have you not read in the Quran, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ? You know, people that look at Ahl al-Dhikr, everyone interprets, there's Ahl al-Dhikr is who? It's the ulama, Ahl al-Dhikr, it's this, Ahl al-Dhikr. It's not what it means. So, the Imam says to this man, is questioning him, he says, who are Ahl al-Dhikr? And you know what this man responds, using his own opinion? He says, Yabna Rasulullah, Ahlu Dhikr are al-Yahud wal-Nasara. He says, see, because of Waraqat ibn Nawfal. He said, the Ahlu Dhikr are the Jews and the Christians. The Imam said, so Allah sent down a book upon us, so the Christians and Jews explain us, interpret this book to us, translate this book to us. Is that who we have to turn to understand our book? And the man pauses. Then he says, then who are they? He says, have you not read the Quran? That we have sent upon you dhikra. Be nice when you get to this verse. That's in, I think, it's in Surah Al-Talaq. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. It's in, Surah Al-Talaq. It says, قَدْ أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ إِلَيْكُمْ ذِكْرًا, and it stops. That Allah has sent upon, indeed revealed to you a dhikra, a reminder. Okay, the next verse, how does it start? It says, رَسُولًا يَتْلُو عَلَيْكُمْ آيَاتِهِ. Now, everyone that studied Arabic, a mubtada begins with what? It's marfu', it should be rasulun. So why is it rasulan? Because rasulan is a na'at of dhikra. That rasul is what? Rasul, if you look at the first one, the dhikr, this is a what? It's talking about the dhikr. This is a description of the dhikr. This reminder is the Prophet. So dhikran rasula, he says, وَنَحْنُ أَهْلُ الذِّكْرِ. We are the family of Rasulullah. This is what it means, nothing else. So I need to understand the Quran, I turn to them. I don't turn to anyone else. So if Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi is where the buck stops with him, why would he have to go to a Christian monk to understand his religion? So Allah Azza wa Jal says he looks upon this. What the Imam is saying, that God looked upon his heart, he found no heart ready to contain like this heart. And then it says, أَذِنَ لِأَبْوَابِ السَّمَاءِ فَفُتِحَتْ. Allah then gave permission to the doors of the heavens and they opened up. So look at the way it begins. It's different to the other story. It says, وَمُحَمَّدٌ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَآلِهِ يَنْظُرُ إِلَيْهَا. Where's he looking? The Prophet is looking to the doors of the heavens. This isn't some smokes and mirrors. This isn't some magic. This is something Rasulullah is familiar with. It's not something he's not familiar with. It's something he's ready for. He's ready for this message that's about to come down. It's not something where he's being caught off guard. His eyes aren't being blindsided by this. This is something he's ready for. وَأَذِنَ لِلْمَلَائِكَ فَنَزَلُوا. Allah permits for the angels to come down. They come down. وَمُحَمَّدْ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَآلِهِ يَنْظُرُ إِلَيْهِ. Rasulullah sees the angels coming down. And then Allah Azza wa Jalla, I just want to continue from here. I don't want to read all. He says, then Jibreel came down. Okay? And he says that he has an aura of nur. Then when he comes down, he says he holds the Prophet, he says from here. And he holds him ready for this revelation. And shakes him to give him this revelation. There's no throttling here. He's about to give him the revelation. He says, Ya Muhammad, iqra. Oh Muhammad, read. You don't see wama ana biqari. He says every narration, he says, wama iqra. What do I read? There's none of this wama where it can be used as a nafi in this place. And then he says, Ya Muhammad, iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. خلق الإنسان من علق. Begins with this. He reveals this to him. Then, after he gives him this revelation, it doesn't say he throttled him. It doesn't say the Prophet was lost. It says the Prophet came down. And you know when Ibrahim says, Rabbi arini kayfa tuhyi al-maut. Tell me, show me how you give. You know, Ibrahim asked to see God give life back, to bring the dead back to life. Does Ibrahim not believe in this? Allah asked him. He said, أَوَلَمْ تُؤْمِنْ? Do you not believe, O Ibrahim? قَالَ بَلَى. Of course I believe. وَلَكِنْ لِيَطْمَئِنَّ قَلْبِي. You know, on the day of Ashura, where Imam Hussein alayhi salam, after he had tested his companions and he was left with the most righteous, what did he show them? He showed them their places in paradise. Why? They knew where they were going. He gave them the extra surge forward. So when Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi is coming down, the hadith actually says here, you know, when you read this hadith, it's mind-boggling. It says, as he comes down from this, it says every stone, and when it says, فَأَنْتَقَ اللَّهُ الْجِبَالَ وَالصُّخُورُ وَالْمَدَرِ. Like, if you think about it, when I talk about animals and humans and plants, they all have what? They all have life. You know, you see a tree, it's living. When it's cut and you know, if it's been poisoned, you can see when it dies. They're living entities. You know, like for example, this place, every center that's built, Lillah has a ruh. You do know this. Even though it's made by you, people that put it in, it's not a creation. A masjid has a ruh. When you come here, these places, these aradi that you come to have ruh. They have a soul. You think that they're not living entities. They're inanimate, but they have a soul. These rocks, these mountains, when the Prophet walked past, they would say what? They would say, Assalamu alayka ya Muhammad. They would send their salam to Rasulullah. Allah is giving him what? This confidence. He's reinforcing the message that everything is with you. Everything is by your side. Not leaving him after, you know, all shaken up 3 times. He's nearly passed out. Then comes to his wife and he's in fear. Then needs a Christian monk to tell him what to do. Then he attempts suicide several times. Now listen to the way it is. He comes back with, it's a very long hadith. That's why I wasn't going to read the whole hadith. But he returns on this day with this message. This message to bring people out of ignorance into guidance. My dear brothers and sisters, if you look at civilization and the rises of civilization came from 2 things. Came from knowledge and came from ethics and morals and these things, how to live, the way of life. And the destruction of civilizations came from ignorance. Look at today's, You know, Western civilizations, you know, is almost finished. Mark my words. The ignorance is unbelievable. It's reached a point where it's open. There's no more hidden agendas. You look at the world around you. Don't think, you know, people might think, look how much they hate us. No. What's happening is all their colors have been shown. Everything's been apparent and shown that white lives matter. This is all it's about. And for God's sake, these people can't even work out what gender they are today. People have no idea what they are today. And this is why civilization's fallen apart. If you look at the fall, you go research the Roman Empire and the Greeks, the ancient Greeks, look at where their civilization fell. Right near the end is when the men started becoming women and the women started becoming men. Have a look at them. They just were lost for what they were. The world fell apart, and this is what's happening with Western civilization. It's going to fall in the same way. It's right near its end. Do not even... Why? Because they left what? The good way of life that they had. The people that had a good way of life, they left knowledge as we know. There's no such thing as real, pure knowledge anymore. You were taught what the syllabus says. No matter how ludicrous the syllabus is, you teach the syllabus. You don't believe in the syllabus, you teach the syllabus. That's all you do. You are not given a choice in this manner. Rasulullah came. In the second verse of Surah Al-Jum'ah, it says that Allah sent, and I don't want to get into the subject of Ummi, and that's why I want to pass that. Rasulan minhum, he said a Rasul amongst them. Yatlu alayhim, Rasulullah would bring down his verses and signs, and then it says, وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ. The tazkiyah, the purification, is to what? To teach them how to be moral beings. وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةِ. And he would give them pure knowledge. Not knowledge that is interchangeable. You know, this knowledge where is only applicable in certain places and it's not applicable elsewhere. No. Pure knowledge. Where haqq is haqq. And honestly, where would you find anywhere else except Islam where justice is to the point that Allah says in the Quran, do not allow enmity between you and others to bring you away from justice. Sometimes I have enmity with another people. Say, for example, you've made an agreement with a mushrik. You're not allowed to break it because, he's a mushrik. I've given my word. I've given my agreement there. I've given my word to these people. I stick by my word. And this came from Rasulullah, from Islam. And that's why you find that Islam, that wasn't a civilization. Tribal mentality, non-existent, suddenly became the beacon of knowledge and civilization. You know, when someone says, if you don't like Western civilization, why do you use their phones? And I say, look, if it wasn't for binary and algorithm which you got from us, you wouldn't have these phones. So you shouldn't be using our technology. And that is a fact. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to make this month a month when no one leaves this month of Rajab, which we are passing, except with all their sins cleansed. We ask Allah to make the month of Sha'ban a month of blessing for us, a month where we fast as Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi did. If you don't fast in Sha'ban, at least fast on the 15th of Sha'ban. If you don't fast on the 15th of Sha'ban, at least fast the last day of Sha'ban that connects with Shahr Ramadan. At least do one. If you can't do, at least do one day. But those that can do all the days, God bless them. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to give us the energy and effort to fast in the month of Sha'ban and to grant us the opportunity to visit the grave of his messenger Rasulullah Muhammad and grant us his intercession on the day of judgment. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وإلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات والأرواح موتاكم جميعا، ولقضاء الحوائج وقبول الأعمال وتعجيل الفرج وشفاء المرضى وحسن العاقبة. رحم الله من قرأ سورة المباركة الفاتحة مع الصلوات.
Alhamdulillah, when we hear these most eloquent lectures from Sheikh Mehdi, alhamdulillah, it really reminds us of how blessed we are to have the Ahl al-Bayt as our guide. And alhamdulillah, when you hear these ahadith, it's almost like you don't even have to debate with a non-Shia brother. It's so evident that the hadith from our Ahl al-Bayt is so much more concrete and so much more believable. Subhanallah. Thank you, Sheikh. Can we say goodbye to Sheikh with a very loud salat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad? Allah. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And you know what? Knowledge is power. Just imagine when you're sitting in a group with a group of people and you're discussing. I often hear, like, you know, Shia brothers talking to other people and they get heated and the discussion goes nowhere. But really, if you know your books and you know your hadith, you say, brother, you know, your hadith says this, our hadith says this, based on the history. You don't even have to raise your voice. It's so clear, it's so evident. So knowledge is power. Now, where is Sister Manessa? There she is. Can we please welcome our beautiful Sister Manessa, who's going to recite some poetry on a very holy occasion. Welcome her with a very loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Do you want to sit down or do you want to stand up? Stand up, okay.
صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. O sweetest flower that ever on earth did bloom, matchless alike in divine beauty and perfume. O whitest lily that human eyes have seen, O loveliest rose in the world that had been. The words flew as lightning the whole world around. Of truth and light they did fully abound. And nations acknowledging the power of their sway did find and follow in the most truthful way. In wake of their words the true piety did spring, and great acknowledge and virtues did truly bring. From the Arabian deserts, though surrounded they call to the worship of God, the Lord of all. From the Arabian desert, you who taught mankind, now the truest knowledge of God to find. I love you, my prophet, sing your praise, and follow your prophetic ways. One day I'll come and visit your tomb. Inshallah that day will come very soon. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Surely that deserves a very big loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Brothers and sisters, don't leave after the program because we have a very beautiful dinner in honor of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and some nice sweets and gifts and lucky draw prizes and all sorts of things. Now, a familiar face who will also finish off with some Nasheed, Brother Ahmad Rashid. Where is he? Welcome him to the stage with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala.
صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. رقت عيناي شوقا ولطيبة ذرفت عشقا فأتيت إلى حبيبي فاهدأ يا قلب ورفقا صل على محمد. السلام عليك يا رسول الله. السلام عليك يا حبيبي يا نبي الله. Dear brothers and sisters, as tonight we are celebrating Mab'ath, I ask that we all raise our voices in sending blessings upon the Prophet. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. رقت عيناي شوقا ولطيبة ذرفت عشقا فأتيت إلى حبيبي فاهدأ يا قلب ورفقا صل على محمد. السلام عليك يا رسول الله. السلام عليك يا حبيبي يا نبي الله. My heart is so full of longing. I wish to be close to my beloved. I dream to walk in the streets of Medina and to quench the thirst of my spirit by visiting you, O Muhammad. As-salamu alayka ya Rasul Allah. As-salamu alayka ya Habibi ya Nabi Allah. I left all my troubles and worries as I entered your mosque so gently, and as I finally stood there before you, I couldn't stop my tears from falling in your presence, O Muhammad. As-salamu alayka ya Rasul Allah. As-salamu alayka ya Habibi ya Nabi Allah. All together. As-salamu alayka ya Rasul Allah. As-salam حبيبي يا نبي الله. قلب بالحق تعلق وبغاء حراء تألق يبكي يسأل خالقه فأتاه الوحي فأشرق. اقرأ اقرأ يا محمد. السلام عليك يا رسول الله. السلام عليك يا حبيبي Ya Nabi Allah. Oh Taiba, your breeze is so blessed, indeed it brought life back to my spirit. I've left my heart with my beloved, sending blessings on Muhammad. Ya Taibat, جئتك صبا لرسول الله محبا, بالروضة سكنت روحي وجوار الهادي محمد. السلام عليك يا رسول الله. السلام حبيبي يا نبي الله. السلام عليك يا رسول الله. السلام عليك يا حبيبي يا نبي الله. صلوات على محمد وآل محمد.
Ahsant Ahmad, thank you very much. Brothers and sisters, it takes a lot of courage to get up here, so can we bless Brother Ahmad with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Okay, now for the lucky boy.